Ukrainian forces conducted one of their most effective defensive operations in recent months, during a major assault on the eastern outskirts of Pokrovsk. The attack, carried out in December 2025, involved a Russian assault group consisting of 7 armored vehicles, including 2 tanks, several infantry fighting vehicles, 2 armored personnel carriers, and nearly 150 infantry troops. According to Ukrainian accounts, the opposing force entered the area confident in a swift breakthrough, believing the city to be on the verge of capture. However, within 3 hours, the assault group suffered devastating losses, leaving behind burned-out armored hulls, abandoned equipment, and dozens of casualties. Pokrovsk remains a key logistical hub in eastern Ukraine, positioned on critical rail and road routes that supply Ukrainian defensive lines across a wide sector of the front. Commanders emphasized that losing the city would have disrupted logistics and created a strategic threat to Ukrainian formations operating in the region. Throughout the autumn of 2025, heavy fighting continued around the city as Russian forces gradually pushed forward despite high losses. By early December, enemy units had reached the outskirts, prompting Ukrainian command to reinforce positions, strengthen anti-tank defenses, and expand engineering fortifications to prepare for an expected assault. Intelligence later confirmed that Russian forces were preparing a rapid armored breakthrough aimed at seizing major intersections and administrative buildings during the first day of the operation. The plan relied on surprise and numerical advantage. The assault group included 2 tanks of the T-type series, 3 BMP-2 infantry fighting vehicles, 2 MTLB armored carriers, and roughly 150 infantry. However, analysts noted that the attackers critically misjudged Ukrainian preparedness, overestimated their own capabilities, and moved forward with an unjustified confidence that would later contribute to their defeat. Defending the eastern sector of Pokrovsk was a consolidated Ukrainian unit of roughly 70 soldiers under the command of an officer known by the call sign Fortress. The defenders lacked heavy armor but held key advantages: superior knowledge of the terrain and well-prepared firing positions. Fortress organized the defense using a system of mobile ambush groups rather than a continuous line. Anti-tank teams equipped with Javelin and Stugna missile systems occupied elevated firing points overlooking major streets, while engineers placed mines at critical intersections to limit the enemy's maneuver space. On the evening of December 13th, Ukrainian reconnaissance reported that a Russian assault column had halted in a village 3 kilometers east of the city. Drone operators confirmed that the force was preparing for a dawn attack. Fortress immediately raised his unit on alert. Throughout the night, Ukrainian crews checked weapons, coordinated sectors of fire, and occupied concealed positions while awaiting the inevitable engagement. By dawn, all defenders were ready. At 6 a.m. on December 14th, the Russian column began advancing toward Pokrovsk with tanks in front, followed by BMPs and armored carriers transporting infantry. Ukrainian observers tracked their movement and passed updates to the command post. Fortress waited deliberately, allowing the enemy to move deep into the prepared kill zone before issuing the order to open fire. At 6:23 a.m., when the lead tank crossed the designated start line, Ukrainian anti-tank operators launched the first missiles, initiating the battle. Subscribe for further updates and continued coverage of events on the front line. The opening minutes of the engagement resulted in the rapid destruction of both Russian tanks at the head of the column. The first Javelin missile struck the turret of the lead vehicle, disabling it instantly and blocking the roadway. Moments later, a Stugna missile hit the second tank from the flank, igniting the vehicle and halting the rest of the armored convoy. Russian infantry dismounted under fire, attempting to take cover among nearby buildings, but Ukrainian positions had been arranged to create a multi-layered kill zone. Machine gun teams opened fire from upper floors. Snipers targeted commanders attempting to coordinate movements, and mortar crews directed fire onto concentrations of troops around the disabled vehicles. Attempts by Russian infantry to launch a counterattack were unsuccessful. One group of approximately 20 soldiers advanced toward a building that hosted one of the most active Ukrainian firing positions, but the assault stalled after triggering pre-laid mines. Meanwhile, Ukrainian anti-tank operators continued striking armored targets. A Javelin missile destroyed a BMP-2, maneuvering to establish a firing position, while another BMP was immobilized after hitting a mined section of the road. A third infantry fighting vehicle was destroyed by a direct Stugna hit before it could deliver effective fire. By 8 a.m., the attacking force had lost all of its armored vehicles, leaving only isolated groups of infantry attempting to fortify positions near a central intersection. Ukrainian commanders chose not to conduct immediate building-to-building assaults on the remaining Russian positions. Instead, mortar fire was increased to pressure the isolated troops, while all access routes for possible reinforcements were blocked. Ukrainian snipers continued to monitor and target movement within the encircled area, creating additional psychological pressure on the remaining soldiers. Communications intercepted during the battle indicated growing frustration and disorganization among the trapped Russian troops. At around 9 a.m., Ukrainian reconnaissance reported that a Russian reinforcement column was moving toward Pokrovsk along the same route as the original assault group. The column included 2 MTLB carriers and a truck carrying infantry. Anticipating such an attempt, Ukrainian units had positioned a mobile group outside the city to intercept the convoy, while artillery spotters prepared coordinates for immediate action. Before the reinforcement column could reach urban areas, Ukrainian artillery struck the vehicles, destroying the truck and damaging one armored carrier. The remaining vehicles retreated, leaving the encircled Russian troops without support. By 11 a.m., the situation for the remaining Russian soldiers had become untenable. Their ammunition was nearly exhausted, casualties were mounting, and the expected reinforcements had been forced to withdraw. The Russian commander signaled through loudspeaker a willingness to surrender. Ukrainian forces ceased fire and began an organized acceptance of prisoners in accordance with international humanitarian law. 23 Russian soldiers, including several officers, surrendered and were taken into custody. Wounded personnel on both sides received medical assistance. The battle for the eastern approaches to Pokrovsk lasted approximately 5 hours and resulted in the destruction of multiple armored vehicles, significant Russian casualties, and minimal Ukrainian losses. Following the end of the engagement, Ukrainian units carried out a full sweep of the battle area, collecting equipment, weapons, and documents left behind by the defeated assault group. Among the captured materiel were machine guns, grenade launchers, communication devices, and large quantities of ammunition. Particular attention was given to documents recovered from a destroyed armored vehicle, which contained information outlining planned enemy actions in the sector. These materials were immediately transferred to higher command for analysis. A damaged MTLB armored carrier, abandoned by Russian forces, was deemed salvageable and repurposed as a stationary firing point after minimal repairs. Military analysts noted that the successful defense of Pokrovsk relied on several critical factors. Effective reconnaissance enabled Ukrainian commanders to anticipate the assault, understand its composition, and prepare defensive positions in advance. Engineering obstacles, minefields, and fortified firing positions created a layered system that restricted enemy freedom of movement. The coordinated use of anti-tank missiles, machine guns, snipers, and mortars allowed Ukrainian defenders to engage targets across all distances and deny Russian troops the ability to regroup or maneuver. The tactical decisions made by the commander known as Fortress were cited as a decisive component of the operation, demonstrating precise coordination of mobile groups and timely allocation of firepower. In the aftermath of the failed assault, Russian forces reduced offensive activity in the area for several days. Intelligence reporting indicated that enemy command conducted an internal review of the operation, acknowledging major tactical errors. Chief among them was the miscalculation of Ukrainian defensive capabilities and the assumption that resistance would be minimal. The decision to advance in a single column was also identified as a significant error, as the destruction of lead vehicles created a traffic blockage that left the rest of the force vulnerable inside a confined urban area. The defense of Pokrovsk carried both tactical and psychological significance. It showed that a smaller Ukrainian unit, even with limited heavy equipment, could inflict substantial losses on a larger mechanized force through planning and coordinated actions. The success contributed to morale among Ukrainian troops and reinforced confidence in defensive strategies employed in urban environments. Commanders reported that the experience gained by the defenders would be passed on to newly arriving units tasked with maintaining the city's security. Pokrovsk continues to serve as a critical point in the broader conflict, and Ukrainian defenders have since reinforced their positions, expanded minefields, and improved surveillance systems in anticipation of future attacks. Military officials noted that each repelled assault not only weakens the attacking force, but also strengthens Ukraine's defensive posture. The battle demonstrated that attempts to seize the city would come at a high cost to the aggressor, and that Ukrainian forces remain committed to holding the strategic hub, Subscribe for ongoing coverage, detailed frontline reporting, and further analysis of key military developments.